Rafi, as my South African friends have taught me to say long life. So I wish you on this Yahrtzeit a long life. And I want to also show my deep gratitude for your compassion in also including my father-in-law, who left us only a few weeks ago. And I know many of you on this call knew my father-in-law. And so I honor them both with our learning today. So I was thinking about the name Bella. And one of the Bellas I especially love, and that is the description that Marc Chagall has of his wife, Bella. So what I wanted to do is to think a little bit about, to start with the painting and think a little bit about the role of love. We certainly say, Ani l'dodi v'dodi li, but for many of us, this time of Teshuva is actually filled with fear. Fear that we're not living up to expectations, those of others or our own expectations, the fear of disappointment, the sense of perhaps a punitive God who is doing his divine accounting and rendering all of our averot in some large book that is bound to slap, and we fall with it. And so I think although we say Ani l'dodi v'dodi li as a way in Elul of preparing ourselves for the momentousness of tshuva, that we actually, unfortunately, don't always approach it with love. So in the memory of your mother, Rafi, and to the whole Barnett family, I thought it best to think about love. Certainly a mother's love is very deep and profound, and to think of maybe reorienting and reframing. And I think that's particularly hard this year. There are a lot of people, including our own family, who've suffered losses. COVID has really swept the world, and all around us, there are images that are really troubling and very difficult. And so in some way, and I've heard this from many of my students who are feeling, rather than they go into the Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur season, the Yamim Noraim, sort of feeling that they've got a bad check mark. In this way, they're thinking the world has a bad check mark, or God, what has to happen in the world. And so I want to think about the restorative properties of love in this season that allows us to think more about love. So I'm going to beg your indulgence as I share my screen. And I'm going to take you to a Chagall painting. Chagall painted many, many scenes of Shir HaShirim. And if you look at this, again, we can't look very closely at this. This was likely done in the mid-50s, and it's an oil painting. And what you see is a couple levitating on this magical horse, this Pegasus, that takes the couple far above their village. And when you look down beneath the village, you could see a menorah, you can see Moshe and the Luchot. As you're traveling up, you can see a Torah, you see a malach, an angel with a horn, but you also see an upside down chicken. Love seems to disturb the natural order, and we do have a midrash to that effect, Ava mekalkelet et hashura, the sense that the act of love, the being in love, helps us transcend the ordinary, and itself has this sort of holy, lovely property. So I wanted to tie that in with something that Chagall said about, Chagall said in his memoir, My Life. So I want to share two quotes with you. The first, he says, in our life, there is a single color, as on an artist's palette, which provides the meaning of life and art. It is the color of love. So thinking about tshuva as the color of love is a beautiful image. And specifically related to his wife, Bella, I had only to open my bedroom window and blue air, love, and flowers entered with her. So it's beautiful images of Bella, of all the things that entered a room when she entered that space. Now, why is Shir Shirim important? Well, let's keep with me, and we'll look a little bit at the Mishnah Torah. So one of the things that's very striking is that the Mishnah Torah, if you have the practice, as I do, of learning a chapter a day between Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, of the 10 chapters of Hilchot Tshuva, of the laws of repentance, the Rambam, it's as if he reaches this crescendo. He takes a pause in chapter 5, midsection, to talk all about free will. And free will really moves in a direction upward towards the accomplishment of Avodat Hashem, of worshiping God from a state of deep love. Ha'oved me'ava osek b'torah mitzvot v'olech b'netivot chachma lo mipnei davar ba'olam v'lo mipnei yirat hara'ah. the person who really worships out of love. And the Rambam was concerned with all kinds of superstitious Jews he saw who were always worried about getting punished. And so for him, the highest level of godly service is really and the Nitivot Chachma, these paths of wisdom, is not because of worldly matters or because of the fear of evil. V'lo kidei lirasha tova, and it's not so that you can inherit good. Elo oseh ha'emet mipnei shu emet. You do something true simply for the act of truth. Now, this may sound simple, but of course we know in human life, it rarely are things of truth and love simple. V'sof ha'tova lavo b'glala. And good will come really as an expression of this truth. Umala zu hi mala gdola ma'od. This is a really, really high level to achieve. Ve'en kol chacham zochela. And not everyone, even a wise man, cannot achieve this. V'hi malat Avraham Avinu. Shekaro HaKadosh Baruch Hu ohavo. Avraham called God his love. His love was really deep, and his love and observance came out of a state of love. And the Rambam continues, and this is a very, very famous portion of Hilchot Teshuva. No doubt many of you are highly familiar with it. What is it's translated here as proper love. I like worthy love. What is love that is really worthy? Hu she'ahov et Hashem ahava gedola, yitera azam ma'od ad shtei nafsho kshura ba'avat Hashem. So there's this level of love where you really kind of, your souls are connected. Sort of like that painting that we just saw. V'nimtza shogeba tamid, ki'ilu cholech chali ahava, she'en da'ato pnuya me'avat oto she'isha, v'hu shogeba tamid. So, and he continues about how the love for God will be parallel to the love of a woman when a person feels absolutely lovesick and distracted and can think of nothing else. And that, he says, is the kind of love that we find in Shir HaShirim. Ki cholat ava ani. I am sick with love. And he says all of that is really, that is the teaching of what Shir HaShirim is. Now, Shir HaShirim, we typically associate with Pesach because that's when it's read. We don't associate it with this season. But I often wonder if it would have been more appropriate in this season, being Maimonidean, would it have been more appropriate to say, this is actually the time we read Shir HaShirim, because tshuva, and what it's ultimately guiding us to, is not reconciling ourselves with punishment, but it's achieving a level of love where everything that we do comes out of the intensity of goodwill and good feeling. And of course, when we get to the heart of Shir HaShirim, we recognize that that famous moment where the beloved knocks on the door and the lover doesn't answer the door, and she takes so long to get ready that she misses him. He leaves, right? My beloved had turned and gone, and I was faint because of what he said. I sought but found him not. I called, but he did not answer. This moment where one side is ready, because love, of course, requires reciprocity. And I don't know if you remember those old dating days where you just didn't know, I'm not quite in love, I'm kind of in deep like, I blank you. I'm not really sure what I feel towards you, because that relationship is evolving, and we're not expected as human beings to have the same feelings all the time. Well, that too has its parallel in tshuva. God says, return to me, and I'll return to you. And I want you to take the first step. There's reciprocity in this relationship, but I need to know, and we don't have to be there at the same time. And in fact, we have a halacha of tshuva that learns in the Gemara, brought down the Shulchan Aruch and in the Rambam, that if a person isn't ready to grant forgiveness, that person has 3 times, because there's a process. Just because I'm ready to ask for forgiveness doesn't mean that you're ready to grant it. And so again, love and tshuva is all about the timing, and it's also about the seeking. So I just want to share this. Of course, one of the most famous expositions of this passage is from Rav Soloveitchik's work, Kol Dodi Dofek, which has been translated, Listen, My Beloved Knocks. The great moment for which she has been waiting with such longing came at a time of inattentiveness. The elusive and the secretive beloved weary of wandering and tribulations, appeared with his curly locks, black eyes, powerful build, and shining countenance. He stood in her doorway, thrust his hand through the hole in the lock, seeking shelter from the dampness of the night. He wanted to recount her his mighty love, his longing and yearning for a life together, filled with desire and joy, and fulfillment of expectations and realization of dreams. A simple extension of the hand to turn the lock separated the lover and her beloved, the great dream from its complete fulfillment. With one leap, the lover could have attained all her life's desires. So Rav Soloveitchik takes us into the moment of deep disappointment. You're ready for love, you're ready for God in the allegory, but there's not a reciprocity there, and you miss the moment. And that happens so often in life. And I think in some way that's actually a reflection of the year that we've had past. It's been a mountain of disappointments. The graduations, the weddings, the bar mitzvahs that didn't take place, the people who were ill in our family who we couldn't see and visit. I mean, there's just been one layer of disappointment. In fact, for some of us, the disappointments that we experience in our everyday life, the chofesh, the vacation that we missed, or an opportunity at work that no longer took place, those things we almost felt embarrassed to mourn and to feel as a loss, because there were so many other great losses. And I think that many of us are going into 5781 and saying goodbye, good riddance 5780, bring something new, bring something holy, bring something better in this year. And so in that respect, I want to share an observation, and with that I'll close, about the relationship between love and disappointment, because I think that too is true to the process of tshuva, that we try really hard to do something for every right reason, and then we disappoint ourselves. We can't achieve the goal. We have certain minor triumphs, but sometimes there are major setbacks, and yet we have to kind of feel that through the disappointment, we can still feel love. And so I want to share from an unusual book. It's called Accidental Saints by a Lutheran pastor of all people, Nadia Bolz-Weber, Finding God in All the Wrong People. And she runs a church, which I wish there were a shul by this name, the House for All Sinners and Saints. I don't know which door you're going through, but I think that church name is fantastic. And she describes something. She says, it's my practice to welcome new people to the church by making sure they know that House for All Sinners and Saints will at some point let them down, that I will say or do something stupid and disappoint them. And then I encourage them to decide before that happens if they will stick around after it happens. If they leave, I tell them they will miss the way that God's grace comes in and fills the cracks left behind by our brokenness. And that's too beautiful to miss. Now, she illustrates that with an actual story. She accepted the task of officiating at two congregants who are longtime congregants of her church at their wedding. And by accident, she scheduled something. We've all been there. You double book. And she scheduled something in Australia, and she couldn't get out of that commitment. And she felt terrible that she had disappointed this couple who booked her 18 months in advance. I don't know if rabbis get booked 18 months in advance, but she did. And she describes this painful way that she tried to negotiate this and be there for this couple. And she gets a text from the bride, and the bride says, "This is that time, isn't it?" "Huh?" I replied. "When you do or say something stupid and disappoint us." It was, she had prepared her congregation for the moment when she would disappoint them. And so the next day she wakes up to an email that they have released her from the commitment to do their wedding. And as much as this is painful, they write, "We understand why our pastor needs to be in Australia. We love you and we forgive you." And she bursts out in tears. And she talks about it as really the sting of grace, of getting some reprieve when you didn't deserve it. Yes, it's been a year of disappointment. And maybe when we meet other people, maybe when we sign up for shuls or events or organizations and the people we work for, we kind of should have a contract that says, "Dear so-and-so, I just want you to know, at some point, I want you to know I'm here before, and will you be here with me after I disappoint?" And that's why I think the story of Shir Shirim appears, the story of disappointment appears in Shir Shirim. Why not make it purely a love story with every act of happiness? Because I think we all know that in love and in tshuva, we disappoint. The timing is off. We miss the mark. And the question is, are we going to be there for each other even after the disappointment? And can we organize that before the disappointment? Is it ve'arastichli leolam, that I actually am committed to you forever, come what may? Or when something disappoints us, we check out. And I think I'm trying to look at this year as a year of disappointments that has to be met by a surfeit of love, that there's more loving to do, and that although there's disappointment, there's really the capacity and possibility of renewal of what tshuva does. But that tshuva really has to come me'ahava. So I end with that note, thinking perhaps of the depth of a mother's love as we honor Bella's Yahrtzeit, this first Yahrtzeit. And I wish long life to all of you who are listening, and Hashana Tova.